What's going on here?
Invasions.
But you damned young idiot, war starts at midnight, haven't you been told?
Oh, yes, sir. That's why we're here.
But may I ask on what authority?
On the authority of these guns and these men, sir.
Authority! Authority! How dare you, sir? How dare you? Get out of here, sir, you and your gang of awful militia gangsters. Get out!
Popeye!
Sir!
Guard these men. Stuffy!
Sir!
Go to the cubicles. Find which is General Win Candy's. You'll find a brown pigskin case there. Bring it.
Yes, sir.
But you can't do that. The code is in that case. The whole exercise will be a farce if you have that code.
Oh, no, sir. This is going to be the real thing, sir.
But war starts at midnight.
Oh, yes, you say war starts at midnight. How do you know the enemy says so, too?
But, my dear fellow, that was agreed, wasn't it?
Agreed, my foot. How many agreements have been kept by the enemy since this war started? We agreed to keep to the rules of the game, and they go on kicking us in the pants.
Gad, sir, and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about, and what's the best way to talk about two visual mediums, but in a purely oral medium. We're your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
Gad, sir, and me.
And this week we are talking about the life and death of Colonel Blimp from 1943, based on a political cartoon by...
Very definitely political, yes.
By Sir David Lowe. Oh, was he a sir? Okay, that's a sticking point, actually. We'll get back to that, whether or not he's a sir.
Whether he was knighted or not. I seem to think I read that he was.
I think he was, because the two filmmakers were not.
Right.
Specifically. In fact, somebody from the Ministry of Information said, if you make this movie, you will not get your knighthood.
Wow. I didn't
and
come
then
across that
Pressburger
quote.
said to Powell, this was said to Powell, Michael Powell, and then Emeric Pressburger said, are we going to make this movie? And Powell said, yes, we are.
Wow, I didn't come across that, and I read a lot.
Yeah. Okay, David Lowe.
Yes, he was knighted.
Okay.
I'm doing a bit of Tim-style live Googling.
Live Googling, okay. David Lowe was 1891 to 1963. Born in New Zealand.
Yes.
Went through Sydney.
Yep. He worked as a cartoonist in Sydney.
Yes, and then moved to England. Wasn't this the same path that the artists of Barry Mackenzie took? New Zealand, Sydney, England?
Barry Humphries.
No, not Barry Humphries.
Oh, no, the artist.
Yes, Nicholas Garland.
Oh, yes, that's
The artist Nicholas Garland. Yes, he was from New Zealand, and then I think he came through Australia, and then he went to England.
Excellent.
Okay, so he started working for the Evening Standard.
Yep.
At the time was run by Lord Beaverbrook.
That's right.
I need to open a tab on this.
Okay.
Lord Beaverbrook and his wife were major patrons of my hometown. He was from New Brunswick, and I'm telling you, there's so many buildings in my hometown that are either called the Beaverbrook this or Beaverbrook that, or Aiken this or Aiken that. There's a statue of him in town.
That's wild.
We have 3 Salvador Dalis in our Beaverbrook Museum.
Oh.
Because of Lord Beaverbrook's patronage, and one of those is a portrait of Beaverbrook by Salvador Dali.
That's incredible. By the way, Kumar is wearing a t-shirt from the Beaverbrook Art Gallery.
Yes.
With a Dali on it. Presumably one of the Dalis from the collection.
Yes. So I was kind of like... Oh, okay, so there's a connection here.
We love a random connection.
Weird random connection.
We love them.
Okay, we can close that tab. So anyway, he started working at the Standard in 1927, and he was there until 1950. Apparently, over the course of his career, he drew something like 14,000 drawings.
I saw that.
And he was doing these political cartoons, and in 1934, he introduced this character that would appear from time to time, a bit like Charles Addams and the Addams Family. Occasionally, he would go to this family. We would go to this character called Colonel Blimp,
yes.
Horatio Blimp, retired colonel.
This, I think, is his most famous creation.
Yeah. Yeah.
His most enduring kind of creation. The term blimp is still bandied about and still used today.
Right.
But he also did quite a lot of, as you pointed out, just general political cartoons.
Yeah.
Anyone that studied the Second World War, especially from the perspective of the Allies, of the British, has come across Lowe's cartoons.
Right.
They will be printed in textbooks and things like that.
Right. You seem to know quite a bit about him before this week.
Yes, he's famous. I knew about Colonel Blimp, and I knew about his cartoons because they always pop up in textbooks and history books about the Second World War.
Okay.
Famous ones. There's a very famous one which was printed in the collection that you showed me. It depicts the Night of the Long Knives in Nazi Germany when Hitler purged the brown shirts. And it's called They Salute with Both Hands Now. Because they've got their hands up.
Yeah, right.
Because they're at gunpoint. And there's a caricature of Goebbels and a caricature of Goering, and Goering is like a big opera singer wearing a horned helmet. It's brilliant. There's another famous one which he drew to represent the national government, which contained both Conservative and Labour politicians in the late 30s and early 1940s. It's called All Behind You, Winston, and it has Winston Churchill rolling up his sleeves, Clement Attlee, the Labour leader, behind him, also rolling up his sleeves, and then a cohort of people, like the entire nation, essentially, of Britain behind. Anyway, so yes, famous cartoonist, brilliant, very, very, most clever man, and I really love these Colonel Blimp cartoons.
Yes, so they basically, whenever Blimp shows up, they follow a certain structure. In the beginning, Colonel Blimp would always be a Victorian-style Turkish bathhouse.
Yep.
So he'd only be wearing a towel.
Yes.
And he was always...
his face is shaded so that it looks bright red. So even though these are black and white cartoons, he's shaded his face in, and it tricks the eye or the mind, and you see him as having this bright red face because he's in a Turkish bath, like a steam room. He's sweating profusely. His first line, invariably, is "Gad, sir."
Gad, sir, yes. He'll say "Gad, sir,"
which is even in the 30s, no one said "Gad, sir." So it's placing him out of... So is the Turkish baths, actually.
Right, okay.
Neither Gad, sir, nor Turkish baths were fashionable in the 1930s anymore. It's sort of associated with the Victorians, right?
Right.
His second line will, again, invariably be, Lord so-and-so is right.
Yes. Sometimes it's a real person like Lord Beaverbrook. Sometimes he's making fun of his own editor.
Brilliant.
Quite often. Or he could be made up. My favorite one is Lord Sporting Squirt. Or there'll be like Lord Dunce or something like that.
Just like silly names.
Yeah.
Lord Bix. But he does, as you pointed out, mention real figures, including Hitler and Stalin.
Yeah.
But yeah, he'll always be agreeing with someone.
Yes.
Never disagreeing with them.
And he'll be speaking to David Lowe.
Yes.
The cartoonist.
Almost
who
always,
is looking confused, feeble, put upon, not understanding what this blowhard is talking about.
Yeah. So David Lowe's self-portraits in these comics are so funny. He just, as you said, he just looks utterly confused.
Yes.
And kind of wilting in the heat.
Yes.
We're keeping up with and listening to this blustering walrus of him. So he's fat. Colonel Blimp is fat, sweating, usually with a red face, and he has an enormous walrus moustache.
Yes. That's important too. But the other thing I didn't mention about the towel is that after a while they're no longer in the bathhouse. Sometimes they're like deep sea diving, or they could be in bumper cars, but they're still dressed the same. It's still him and Lowe.
He's never in an official situation, and not in these Gad Sir comics. He does sometimes show up in them in like larger, kind of like half pages, but in these small kind of cameo style cartoons, he's always in the bathhouse or doing sport, and generally kind of like making an ass of himself.
Yes.
It all has the effect of making him seem ridiculous, but also harmless.
Yes. And there'll be a title of some sort, but...
Very questionable relevance to whatever he's talking about.
Yes.
It'll just be called a Blimp on skis. Or...
Yes, something very random. But the key point is, after he says, Gad, sir, Lord Beaverbrook is right, then he will say something which is hypocritical or self-contradictory.
Yes, or contradictions is the most common one.
Yes,
or a metaphor that he's mixed up, so a mixed metaphor.
Yes,
or more rarely an opinion Lowe didn't agree with.
Right. Yes. So here I just picked a random one, completely random.
I love
this one's called "Escape of Steam by Blimp." That's the title. We don't know what it means. And he says, "Gad, sir, Lord Snuffield was right. If the country is to be saved from dictatorship, the House of Lords must put a stop to all this democracy."
So some of them are very specific to the period.
Yes. Very specific. I would say...
So that you don't, unless you're intimately familiar with even, like policy choices of
Well,
the
this is the thing. This is a editorial cartoon.
Yep.
So you would read the newspaper, and then you get to page 12, and suddenly you would see this thing in the corner. So you know what the news of the day or the week is. You've been reading about it, and this strip will be very much commenting on something that's probably going on that day, that week. So taken out of context in a collection, a lot of them I was really scratching my head about. Like, I don't know what this.
Some of it, even I don't know some of them. So yeah, for example, but quite a few of them are timeless. Like they're just generally about kind of like reactionary stupidity by old blowhards. This is what's come to be associated with the word blimp.
Yeah.
Some of them are so funny. There's well, speaking of the timeless ones, here's one that could have come out. This one's incredible. This one could have come out today. I'm not sure what he's doing. He might be doing Greco-Roman wrestling or something.
Okay.
Or dancing.
Yeah.
Hard to tell. And he says, "Gad, sir, Garvin is right. There's only one way to stop these bullying aggressors. Find out what they want us to do and then do it." And also the caption of this one is a rare one that actually ties in to what he's saying. Big Apple by Blimp. So I'd say he's talking about the Americans.
Right.
And of course this could be right now.
Right.
Dealing with Trump. One that's a little more... I've taken photos of a few. Here's one. This one's called Leading Article by Blimp. "Gad, sir, Lord Beaverbrook is right." So Beaverbrook gets a mention in this one. "As soon as the League has declared peace on Abyssinia, peace will break out somewhere else."
Yes.
That's about the Italian campaign in Ethiopia and the League of Nations. This is a really good one. This one's just called Blimp. "Gad, sir, Lord B is right. No more German refugees. We Anglo-Saxons must keep our blood pure from Germans."
Yes.
Of course, both the Angles and the Saxons were from Germany, much like the Franks. The most famous one of all, this one's called Security.
Okay.
He's in the Turkish bath here. "Gad, sir, Lord B... is right. We must build a bigger navy than the enemy will build when he hears we're building a bigger navy than he's building." That's one's very famous. That one's quoted all the time.
Yes. Okay, so what else can we say about him is, I guess we've said he's reactionary, definitely pompous. I would say he's...
Above all, stupid.
Yes, that is the key thing.
Low in various places he would write essays, and he eventually wrote an autobiography in 1956. Lowe would say his purpose... So many people would criticise Lowe for his comics because they saw themselves in Blimp, or saw something they supported in Blimp, which is a really damning indictment.
Oh yeah, you're criticising me in those scripts, even though he doesn't name... anybody.
Because above all, Lowe he was criticising stupidity and ignorance. You know, I've got a quote from his autobiography. "I decided to invent a character typifying the disposition to mixed-up thinking, to having it both ways, to dogmatic doubleness, to paradox and plain self-contradiction."
Yeah.
Although it was some people accused him of being anti-military, but he said the only military thing about Colonel Blimp is his title. And he even did a list of... He totted up all his strips, and he counted who he was, what they were about,
what the targets
and they were
were,
almost all about politics.
Right.
Almost none of them were about anything really to do with the military.
Yeah.
And he said, this is a figure that has always existed and always will exist. He said, without Blimp, in the essay, "Does Colonel Blimp Exist?" He said, "Without Blimp, history would be a barren record of progress." Robert Graves wrote an article as well in the late 1930s, I think. Called something like The Family History or The Lineage of Blimp, and he went through kind of like all of British history, or world history even, coming up with all the different Blimps.
Right. It's a very specific type, and in fact in some of the cartoons you'll have a room full of 20 Blimps. By which I mean 20 guys that are bald with the walrus mustache that look exactly the same.
Yes. Yep. We'll all be saying, "Gad, sir."
Yes.
But yeah, you could make, but it is Some of them are timeless, and you could even make up new Blimpisms. If I were, I were still teaching English, I might assign my students to draw their own Blimp cartoon and come up with a Blimpism.
Right.
Gad, sir, Peter Dutton is right. We must sack 41,000 public servants, so the ones that work from home will have desks when I send them back to the office.
Yeah.
There you go. Topical.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we need David Lowe still. I felt, as I was reading all these, I was like, we need him now to come back, because, boy, you could do millions. There were a couple in here about tariffs, for sure.
Yep. Like that Big Apple one.
Yes. Okay, I don't know if we need to go, because that's kind of the rhythm of the strip, and it doesn't really vary that much. I don't know if we need to go too much.
Well, we've mentioned some of our favourite ones.
Yep.
We've mentioned what we said. The
other thing I want to say is that David Lowe was a very smart writer. In his prose essays, and he's got one where he's talking about Colonel Blimp, and then he wrote one from the perspective. He's writing as Colonel Blimp, writing an essay complaining about David Lowe.
And it's full of quotes from the strip too.
Yeah.
So he's gone back through the strips and found all these funny quotes, and then built kind of like paragraphs around them. It's hilarious. Yeah. I'll read one more quote from Lowe.
Yeah.
This one was from an essay he wrote in 1942, so presumably when the film was being made. Was Colonel Blimp right? I now rise to make a shattering revelation. I conceived and sustained Colonel Blimp as a symbol of stupidity. Not of colonels, nor of stupid colonels in particular. Not of authority, nor especially of stupid authority. Not exclusively of the right wing nor the left. Stupidity has no frontiers, domestic or foreign.
I'll also mention one more thing. There is a Major Blimp who appears in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 2, and he gets burned up by the Martians in their first attack on Earth.
Does he say Gad, sir?
I don't know if he does, and he's a major, and it's too soon, so I think he's like an ancestor or something.
Yeah, that's something he does, Alan Moore does in those, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Ancestors
in order to fit someone in.
Figures.
Yes.
Like Campion Bond?
Yes. Yes. Okay, let's get to this movie.
Okay.
Which came out in 1943.
Amazing. It's amazing to me that this film came out in the middle of the Second World War.
Yes, for 100 reasons.
Yeah.
Which we'll try to delineate. I also want to say, it's an odd choice to look at this political cartoon and go, let's make a movie of this one panel strip that just repeats. But there's various stories about this. So it's directed by Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger. They went by the title The Archers often.
Also the name of their production company.
Their production company. And they had a little logo.
Powell was British, I think, but Pressburger was born in Europe and was an emigre.
Yeah, he was Hungarian by birth, and he was considered an enemy alien at the time they were making this movie. In fact, he had made movies for the war effort.
The 19th Parallel or whatever it is.
Yeah. So he had been making these war effort movies, but he was still considered an enemy alien.
So he was registered as an enemy alien under the wartime legislation.
Yes.
Much like one of the characters in the film.
Yes. Oh yeah, there's a lot of parallels here. So where was I going with this? Okay, so 1943.
We're talking about why choose Colonel Blimp.
Yes, why choose Colonel Blimp? And why choose this title? And we'll talk about that as well. Yes. It's called The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. There's no Colonel Blimp in the movie. No. There is a
major general.
Major general. He starts at a different rank. I don't know if he ever has a rank. Is Colonel higher than Major General?
No, lower. So he would have. He would have presumably passed Colonel at some point.
His name is Colonel.
His name is Clive Candy.
Clive Wynne Candy. And his nickname is Sugar Candy.
Yes.
At one point, the movie was going to be called The Life and Death of Sugar Candy.
Yes.
I think to get funding or approval from the Ministry of Information.
When there was a chance, so we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
Okay.
But there was a chance that it would get the official blessing of the British government as a propaganda film, essentially, and would receive resources in the form of.
They would have the military trucks and uniforms, things like that.
So military equipment and uniforms and soldiers, and also Laurence Olivier, who was serving in the military at the time. So in order for him to appear in this film, he would have had to have been released from service. Of course, his service he wasn't shooting a gun, and he was doing propaganda work. But nonetheless, to work in this private movie, sometimes online you see that this film is called an official government movie. No, it's not. It's a private film. And in fact, the government tried to get it stopped, as we'll find out.
Yeah.
But at the time when it had that alternative title, yes, they were trying to make it a little more palatable to the Ministry of Information so that they could attract some kind of official patronage. But it was not forthcoming because they felt that it was, having looked at the script, they felt that it was too kind to the Germans.
Right.
A little too disparaging of the armed forces. And also, I think they were a bit suspicious of the idea of ridiculing someone of high rank.
Well, I think the Colonel Blimp comics were already a thorn in their side.
Very much so. And I think that's one of the reasons why
that might be the why they changed the
Powell
Blimp to Candy.
Yeah, and one reason why Powell and Pressburger chose Colonel Blimp as kind of like the framing device, the heart of this story, is because this was a very popular cartoon, and everybody knew about it, and there were people criticizing it, as I pointed out, and there were people denying that they themselves were blimps.
Right.
And there's talk, even in the House of Commons, about rooting out blimpism in institutions like the army.
Right.
So people are very aware of the idea of Colonel Blimp. So the Archers, Powell and Pressburger, have they want to make a film. They want to make a patriotic film, I suppose. Yeah,
it seems there was a scene that they cut from one of their previous films called, what was it, that one of our airplanes is missing?
One of our airplanes is missing, yeah. Or one of our pilots is missing. And they're interested in the question of where does a blimp come from?
Yes, well, there's a line in that movie, in that scene which is deleted, where an older soldier says something like, "You don't know what I was like as a young man," or something like that, or something about the difference in their ages. They cut that scene, and somehow that stuck in their mind, and that got transferred into this entire movie.
Yeah, it's a hell of a movie.
With Blimp kind of as a framing of it.
Blimp, I mean, Lowe himself might have said that Blimp was born with a walrus moustache. But, really, how he had to have been young once.
Yes.
How did he end up
How do you become a blimp?
How do you end up like this? How do you end up a caricature?
Yes.
Like that?
Well, it's interesting because now, in 2025, I would say, it's all those kids that are going to the rich schools and are already right-wing. You can see what they're going to be like in 40 years. This movie takes a completely different direction from that.
It's not like that. It's less about Blimp as reactionary and right-wing and more about him just...
Out of step.
Being frozen in time.
Yes. Very much so. So it's not quite like the Blimp of the comic strip in that respect.
No, it's almost a realistic take.
Yes.
What you might even call a deconstruction.
Yes. So the credit we get for the comic is with acknowledgments to David Lowe, creator of the Mortal Colonel, but then the letters I&M plunk down out of this tree and fall in front of Mortal, so creator of the Immortal Colonel.
Yes. We get the opening kind of titles appear over what appears to be a tapestry.
Yeah.
Of Blimp with walrus moustache, bare-chested much as he always is in the comic, on a horse.
Yeah.
Looking a bit like Don Quixote or something like that.
Yes, or in knightly, chivalrous times of chivalry or something.
Yes, but he also looks faintly ridiculous because he's not wearing armor.
That's right.
He's bare-chested. So you feel like, okay. You feel like you're on stable ground here. You know who Colonel Blimp is. Oh, okay, look, here we go. We're getting a ridiculous guy.
Yeah. But the title's also very interesting because there's no Colonel Blimp in the movie. So in order to understand the title of this movie, you need to know who Colonel Blimp is. You need to know that comic strip.
Yes, you do. You have to. Yes. In that sense, it's very of its time. Yes.
Yeah. Because there's nobody at any point in the comic says, or in the film, any point in the film says, is the name Colonel Blimp, or says, you remember that comic strip about that guy, Colonel Blimp?
The word Blimp doesn't appear in the film.
Yeah.
Except in that title.
Yes.
It's just...
it would be like having a movie about, I don't know, two young people in love and calling it Romeo and Juliet, but they're not Romeo and Juliet. You're not making an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. but that has some sort of, you know what Romeo and Juliet means, and that's loaded with some associations that you bring into the movie that's never mentioned in the movie. This may be a bad example. Anyway.
That's fine. All right, so this is full color, Technicolor.
Technicolor. This is the most Technicolor movie I've ever seen, especially this 2011 restoration.
Oh, I just love it. It's beautiful.
I would not believe it. It was like if you've ever seen the Errol Flynn Robin Hood, which was I think a few years before this, but it was not Technicolor. They developed some new process, but I think it was the same. Maybe it was the same. It's 3-strip process where they have like a very complicated thing with 3 negatives being produced in different colors.
It looks fantastic.
Unbelievable. Shot for shot.
I was on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
For the first hour, certainly, I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen.
Yeah.
To see, and remember, this was shot in 1942.
Yeah.
When you see footage from 1942, it's never in color. Never.
Yeah.
But this is.
Yeah, and by the way, I've seen pictures of the camera, and it's giant. It's the size of like 3 people. I don't know how they were moving this thing around, but it was a huge beast of a device to shoot this.
Yeah, I will talk a bit more about the colours later when we go back in time to the early 20th century.
Yeah.
When no one wore khaki in the in the first decade of the 20th century. Everyone wore these incredibly flamboyant outfits.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about it already.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing. So, how do we start? We start.
It's basically there's
1942.
It's 1942. There's a camp of soldiers in England. They are the Home Guard. And they get orders that the commander of this base, his name is Spud, I guess his nickname.
Oh, this is the Home Guard. This is the regular army.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But they get orders for
War games.
War games, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to start at midnight. And this guy's like, well, we're going to start at 6 o'clock. We're not going to wait till midnight.
Well, they go over because make it like the real thing, we hear.
That's part of, in the orders, it says make it like the real thing.
Make it like the real thing. War starts at midnight. And then they say, well, the real thing, what does that mean? And I think Spud says something like, well, it means what do you think it means? It means we take 100% casualties and get nowhere, or something like that.
Yeah.
The original line, which was cut, actually mentioned rape.
Right, okay.
So, war is serious business.
Yeah. So they're like, okay, we're
Make
going to
it
start
like,
early.
yeah. So he says, we're going to go at 6 o'clock.
Spud has some inside information from this girl he has seen.
We sort of don't really know that yet. He calls her Matahari.
He says, I'm going to meet with my Matahari again, or whatever.
Which is a reference, which everyone in 1942 would have known.
Yes.
Reference to a famous Dutch spy.
Yes, Dutch lady spy. He goes in to see her, and then they're waiting for him to come out. This lady comes out and goes away. She drives off, and they're like, where is Spud? They go in. He's been knocked out.
We didn't see it happen.
They chase this woman into London.
Yeah. She's going to warn someone. We don't know who.
We don't know who.
And we know that they're planning to surprise attack the Home Guard in London ahead of the War Games, which kind of invalidates the point of the War Games, but whatever, it doesn't matter. They've been told to do it like the real thing, and by God, they're going to do it.
Yeah. And
that means surprise attack. They even say, like Pearl Harbor.
Right, yes.
This is a year after Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
You weren't supposed to be making favourable comparisons to Pearl Harbor a year after it occurred.
Yeah.
Amazing that this line is in the film.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. So she sneaks into this Turkish bathhouse. They chase her in there. They go in. They're like, we're taking over. It's War Games, whatever. They go in where all these guys are in the bath. They know that this guy has information. I think Spud has information from his Matahari that this Major General Candy is in the bathhouse.
Yes.
They go in there. We meet General Candy. He is
Colonel Blimp.
He is the Colonel Blimp. I actually, did you see the line in the script about this? The line in the script says, General Win Candy is so like Colonel Blimp in appearance that he must certainly have been the model who inspired David Lowe.
What a great line.
Yeah.
He looks amazing.
Now, I want to say, fat. I thought this was an old actor. And when they go back in time, I thought they had a different actor. No, it's the same actor. They've grayed his hair. They've shaved his head. Maybe they built a prosthetic belly for him.
Yeah, I think perhaps the Technicolor lends itself well to this kind of illusion. but he looks exactly like an old man.
Yes, I thought he was an old man. By the way,
It's amazing.
there is an amazing story about this as well, was that when De Niro and Scorsese were prepping for Raging Bull, and they were like, how are we going to do this aging? They had dinner with Powell and Pressburger, and De Niro was banging them with questions. How did you do the effects? How did you make him look old? How did you do this? How did you do that?
That's amazing.
That's only the first Raging Bull story in this
We
episode.
mentioned Raging Bull on this podcast a couple of
Very
times.
recently.
Boxing
But yeah, but they eventually Pressburger said it was done with acting.
You have to get a great actor.
Yeah.
The name of the actor?
Okay, Roger Livesey.
Yeah.
So he was a last-minute replacement for
Laurence Olivier.
Laurence Olivier. He was working in a munitions factory at the time that they brought him on board, and then he did some other Archer movies after.
He did.
As
but
well.
This is his magnum opus. This is the
Right.
performance of a lifetime in this
yeah.
film. He plays the Colonel at 3 different ages.
Over a course of 40 years.
Not the Colonel, but he plays
Yes.
Candy.
You can call him the Colonel. You might as well.
And in each, he's utterly believable.
Yes. Yes. In fact, there was another point when they at the mill, I was like, did they get to a different actor for the middle one as well? I was really like baffled at what was going on, because he's a very young, fit, handsome man in that first version,
Yep.
especially.
Yes, he's the actor himself. I think was 36.
Okay.
but playing a younger man.
Right.
You believe it?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so what happens is Blimp, let's call him, but Candy is outraged that he's been interrupted during his bath.
Yeah.
And he's like, the games are supposed to start at midnight.
Yes.
And
Like steam's coming out of his ears, just like the Blimp of the cartoons.
And Spud is like, well, you said to do it like the real thing, and this is like the real thing. You guys are old. You're.
It's like, but it was agreed. And it's like,
Yeah.
he's like, do you think the Nazis will agree? Do you think the Nazis agree to start war when you want it to start? Do you think if they agreed to something, they would stick to it?
And Candy's very blimpish. He's just like, this is not the way things are done.
Yeah, he's just completely outraged. He can't process it.
He's furious. Yes, he can't process. That's the best way to put it. His brain just cannot compute that this is happening. This is not how wars are conducted. We said it would start at midnight. It has to start at midnight. That's the gentlemanly way to conduct war. Which is that's a real blimpism. But there you go. And he actually gets into fisticuffs with this kid.
Well, the kid starts. He's like, he's like, by what authority?
Yeah.
Are you here? Like, and the guy, he actually says, by the authority of these guns and these men.
Yeah.
Which is, we like our classical references on the podcast. This is like Pompey the Great in ancient Rome, when he was asked what he was doing in this particular town in Italy. He said, who are you to quote laws at me when I carry a sword?
Right. Right.
So, Spud starts mocking them.
Yes.
He says,
This is a line about, this is Napoleon said about soldiers crawling on their bellies, and it's like he's about to...
An army marches on their stomach.
Yeah, and he's about, like, insulting, but you... And then he's like, what were you going to say about my son? He said, boy, if your belly grows as much as your head in 40 years, your belly will be bigger than
all of us.
any of ours. They get into...
He mocks his mustache.
Yes.
He's just really laying into him. And Candy just loses his cool, and they actually get in a fist fight and fall into the pool. In a great... He yells this amazing line. He says, you laugh at my belly, but you don't know how I got it.
Yes.
You laugh at my moustache, but you don't know why I grew it.
Yes.
Who are you to judge me, what kind of man I was 40 years ago?
Yeah. That was an amazing line, because we see how he ended up... We see what he's been through in his life, the mustache, all this stuff has a reason.
He grows the mustache for a very important reason.
Yes.
That has to do with his life experience.
Yes. So...
As they fall into the pool, we get a transition.
Well, okay, this is amazing. They fall in the pool, he says the line about, you know what I was like 40 years ago, and then they're both underwater, and you hear this gurgling, 40 years ago, and there's an echoey effect with the bubbles, and then the camera pans across this pool, this bath, spa, and then we hear the 40 years ago, and then young Blimp, Candy, climbs out of the other end that they had jumped in from.
It's so good.
I don't know how they did it. It's
amazing.
Because it's the same actor. This is why I was like, well, wait, is it a different actor?
they've done an invisible cut.
There's a splice in there that we cannot
And
see.
you can't see it.
Yeah.
In 42, amazing.
Yes.
This film is technically very, very good.
Yes.
There are some cuts, there are some fade outs which I think must be typical of the time, where the scenes fade out before dialogue is finished being delivered. It must just be a stylistic thing.
Right.
But this film is beautifully shot.
Yeah.
Beautifully shot and brilliantly edited.
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it is just the tonic. It is the tonic my soul needed after last week.
Yes. So now we're in 1902, and Candy has returned from South Africa from the Boer Wars.
Yes.
He is recuperating because he had some sort of leg injury. So he's supposed to be back for...
They'd heard that he'd had his leg amputated.
I don't think it's...
He's on leave, I think. Or on convalescence. He has a Victoria Cross, which is the highest award you can get in the British Army.
Yes, but he's a young, annoying whippersnapper. Him and there's a fellow soldier there that meets him there, and they start singing this opera. It was, what was it? It was I Am Titania. They start singing that at the top of their lungs, and this old guy, the Blimp of their generation, starts complaining about these young people singing at the top of their lungs.
He's actually credited as Period Blimp.
Period Blimp, right. Right, this guy. Yes.
He's angry at them.
Yes.
Yeah, and then later on, he meets them outside the bath when they're all in their clothes again, and they're in their glorious, 1902 army uniforms. Bright colours burning off the
medals,
screen.
Yes.
Braid, helmets, feathers, everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, he starts upbraiding them this period blimp, and then he notices that Candy has a VC, and then he just starts fawning all over it.
Yes. Yes. Now we recognize this guy as like a fellow soldier, even though this guy's retired. This period blimp is past his prime. So this friend Blimp had done Blimp had done an interview for some newspaper, and it had been seen by the niece. It was
in the Times. Yeah.
The niece of this other soldier, and she wrote a letter saying, I think she's in Berlin. And she's like, hey, I think there's a spy here who's spreading misinformation about the British, saying that the British in South Africa are killing women and children.
Yes, specifically about the terrible conduct of the British Army in South Africa during the Boer War.
Yes.
So it's assumed, she says it's the work of a spy.
Right.
So it must be the work of a spy.
Yeah.
And that's what Candy says. So this is the work of a spy.
Yes.
Because...
This is... this movie is glorious, but there's some rose-colored glasses over certain bits, like...
Well, I don't know, because they even mention concentration camps. Now, famously, concentration camps were invented in the Boer War.
Okay.
By the British.
Okay, but they don't say that in the movie, and I think...
They don't, I don't think you could.
I don't think they would ever admit to any British atrocities.
But I think...
In this movie.
This might be... I think we're already seeing some signs of... Candy's, his own rose-coloured glasses.
Right.
Because there's no other explanation for why someone would spread calumny in Berlin than that it's enemy action. And in fact, his reaction is very kind of romantic.
Yes. Yes.
He goes and speaks to his superiors.
He wants to go there. He's on leave.
He says, He's
on 4 weeks leave.
I'd like to take my leave in Berlin.
Yeah.
And the guy, Colonel Beveridge or something is his name.
He's another blimp. Every superior is a blimp.
Yes.
Of some sort. He reads every Sherlock Holmes stories, but he doesn't know who Conan Doyle is.
No, hilarious.
Yeah.
There's also an in-joke here. The actor who plays the character that loves Sherlock Holmes famously played Dr. Watson.
Oh, okay, I see.
No, well, I say famously. It would have been famous in 1942. For us, of course, we have to look that up.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So I discovered reading. I read 2 books as preparation for this episode. And they just say, no. He says this is a diplomatic problem that needs to be solved through
Yes, it's not a military problem, right.
Yeah. You can't go to... Yeah. This is absurd. He chews him out and then he says, would you like to come to dinner?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Which, again, this is a very blimpish thing.
Yeah.
Tell someone off and then just, jolly good show, let's go to the club.
Yeah. So he defies the orders and he goes to Berlin anyway. He meets the niece, which is this woman, Edith Hunter.
Edith Hunter, played by
Deborah Kerr. Deborah Kerr. It's spelled K-E-R.
It is spelled K-E-R.
You're right. You are right. It's Deborah Kerr. 6-time Academy Award nominee, Deborah Kerr. 20 years old at this point in time.
Yes, or 21.
Yeah.
Very young. First film. Her first
Right.
film.
Very young, but amazing. Like... She's actually plays 3 roles, which we talk about, but
I guess kind of like Candy, like
in certain senses, she's always like, well, she sometimes seems to be playing older.
She plays 3 different characters.
Yes, but she's sometimes playing a little bit. Seems to be playing somebody who's supposed to be older than 20. You know.
Oh yeah, certainly.
But she really, is amazing in this.
Yes,
really carries herself really well. Is so glamorous. In every shot, even when she's a nun in one scene, she's so glamorous.
She's a nurse.
Sorry. She's a nurse. She's a convict.
But in like a wimple, like the World War I nurse kind of wimple. It's very prudish kind of a costume.
Yeah. So he goes to see her. She says that the spy's named Calvinitz. She knows where...
I should have said. Sorry, go on.
She knows where Calvinitz hangs out. They go to this big restaurant...
this is the spy,
the Calvinist is a spy. So she's like, he's going to show up here.
What's more, Candy knows him personally.
Yes.
Because he was his prisoner. Candy guarded German prisoners in... Or he guarded prisoners, I guess Boer prisoners. But for some reason, this particular guy, I think because he was a double agent working for both sides, he was there and he was his prisoner. And he would only play... Candy kind of good-naturedly tormented him by playing one particular aria over and over.
But all the other records were broken.
He said he broke them.
Oh. On purpose?
I think it's implied.
Oh, I thought they were...
Like, it's just jokes.
But wasn't that in a different conversation that had nothing to do...
It was an earlier conversation, an establishing conversation. This film doesn't do a lot. This film holds your hand a lot. But in this case, I think...
Oh, I would say there's a lot of not hand-holding when people are speaking German.
Oh, no.
Or other languages.
But this film, I think, would benefit from what is nowadays known as an editor. Because there are a whole bunch of superfluous scenes.
Well, you know what? This has been cut several times.
Yes, it has.
So there was like an hour, 50-minute cut. There was a 90-minute cut, which Scorsese saw on TV as a kid.
Yeah.
And that was 90 minutes with commercials.
You could do it. You'd lose a lot.
Oh yeah, the whole framing. He said the whole frame was cut.
Yeah.
None of this was all restored in 1983.
Yes.
All the stuff was put back in.
But there are all these scenes. Seen in a modern film where we would fill in the blanks ourselves. Quite often there will be a scene explaining it.
Okay.
But not always. In fact, we often cut away from action.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, yeah.
But anyway, sorry, that was a pointless digression. Let's return to this scene.
This all will play out as we talk through the movie.
Right, yeah.
So they go to this big restaurant which has a live orchestra playing.
Mm-hmm, of course. Because it's the 1902. There's no music that's not live.
Exactly. So, of course. But there's music. Anyway, so they pay they give the waiter some money to give to the band to play a particular song.
It's Mignon.
Yeah, which is the song he knows will drive Calvinitz crazy when Calvinitz has entered into this restaurant. Calvinitz is like, that song, he doesn't know why the band's playing this song. They try to bribe the band with beer to play a different song. They get counter-bribed again by Candy.
Yep.
This goes on and on for a while, and Calvinitz sees him. He says, why is this happening? He looks up, he sees
his tormentor
up there. And he goes up there, they have a big argument.
Yep.
Calvinitz actually spits in his face.
Yeah.
And then we get Candy punches out Calvinitz.
Yes.
And now we have a diplomatic incident. Which is exactly what the higher-ups did not want to happen.
Yes, that's right. They specifically didn't want that. They wanted to solve this diplomatically, but Candy is very concerned with questions of honor and decency. And unfortunately, he said some rash things.
Yeah.
Specifically, he said that this particular club, should be ashamed to count the spy among its members. And to which the Germans they harumph and stamp their feet, and they say, "We'll have you know that the army is the patron of this club." And they said, in that case, the army should be ashamed to have anything to do with this situation. And oh no, he definitely shouldn't have said that, because now The diplomats back at the embassy, they actually say Candy has pissed off the entire German army.
Yes. Yes. So now...
They all want... And dueling is very big
That's right.
in Germany at this point.
Yeah. So there has to be a duel to sort this out. That's the only way this can be sorted.
Yes.
So the Germans choose their guy, and he doesn't want to duel either. But they've assigned a guy to fight Candy.
Amazingly, Candy has so much sang-froid that he's actually asleep when they come and get him for the duel.
Yes.
Anyway, he comes in, he's never fought a duel before, and he doesn't know who he's going to fight.
Yeah.
He just knows he's pissed off the German army. The German army wants the whole German army's angry at him.
Yes.
Here.
It's a matter of settling they have to settle their honor.
The whole officer class is drawing lots to see who will get to fight him and redeem German honor in this instance. Yeah. And Candy has never met his opponent until they meet in the gymnasium.
Yeah.
And there's a great scene. It's so long by modern standards, but
very
it's really good.
Amazing of the all the protocols for the duel.
We would have been in a modern film. We would have just they're dueling. We would have seen them start, but it goes so long. There's this Hungarian actor. No, he's not Hungarian. He's of Hungarian extraction, born in Britain, to Hungarian aristocrat parents, who plays a Swedish colonel, I think, Colonel Borg.
Okay.
Who puts on a Swedish accent.
Yes. Yes.
And explains all the rules of the duel in excruciating detail.
Yeah.
Including the fact that he's going to use the German words for start and stop.
Yeah.
Los and Halt.
Yeah.
And it just goes on, but I couldn't look away.
Yes.
The costumes.
Yeah. There's also a hilarious bit in here where Candy has the option of either rolling up his sleeve or tearing his sleeve off, and he says, "Which should I do?" And the referee says,
I'm not permitted to give advice."
Yeah, so he tears it off, and then he says that was the
correct choice.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
Then after all this build-up, they weigh their sabers. They have their seconds.
Now the other guy comes in. This is Theo Kretschmar-Schuldorf, played by Anton Walbrook. Walbrook was a Austrian actor who had fled Germany in 1936.
Yep. And
so
as we'll find out, that
is much like Pressburger. This is very relevant to the story.
His real name was Adolf.
Right.
Adolf Walbrook.
Okay.
Anton Walbrook was his stage name in England. Half Jewish.
Right.
And gay.
Right. Okay.
and a vehement anti-Nazi.
Right. Okay. Well, this guy walks on screen. He's also an absolute knockout. He's just very commanding as soon as he appears.
It's amazing. They
standing very straight backed, ready for this duel.
We get a shot of them looking into one another's eyes, and this is the first time they've met.
Yeah, right.
I think at one point Candy says, "I'm about to duel a guy I've never met."
Yeah.
And there's a great line. One of the Germans says, "Duels are sometimes like this." Pause. Marriages also.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so the duel starts, and then the camera pans up through the roof of the building, outside of the building,
and it's like a snow globe. It's got snow.
And then swings down into a carriage which is parked outside.
How did they do that in 1942? Is this something Scorsese mentioned?
Well, he mentioned this specifically because there's a key fight in Raging Bull where I can't remember which fight it was, but anyway, he's like, every fight in Raging Bull is different. How am I going to handle this one? And he didn't know what to do with it. And then he specifically pinpointed this scene in this movie.
Incredible.
And was like, I'm not going to show the fight. So he shows Jake LaMotta putting the wraps on. It's a continuous shot like this, where he walks out of the changing room, he walks out through the crowd, into the ring, the camera pans up, over the ring, we see the first few punches, and then it cuts, and then the fight's over.
This is exactly what we see in this film.
Yes, he lifted that directly from this
incredible
movie.
Because it's really something.
Because as Scorsese pointed out, the important thing is not the outcome of the match, it's the build-up. It's all that. We had a 5-minute protocol scene. It's about the attitudes of the two fighters and where they are in their journey. It doesn't matter what the outcomes. And in fact, when we get to the next scene in the hospital,
we don't even know who won.
We don't know who won. But
in fact, we never find out who won. Actually,
well,
they each cut one another.
He got cut, but Theo got cut. Candy fell through some glass or something, and his...
No, he didn't. No, they're covering it up.
Oh.
So what happened is they each got a cut.
Okay.
I think I'm not sure what the rules are for dueling, but it might be to whoever cuts the other one first.
Okay.
And this is with sabers, so this wasn't with foils or something. This was great big sabers that they're swooshing around with great big edges. So we don't see the fight, and in fact we don't even see the aftermath. We just see an ambulance leaving.
Yes. Yeah, we don't know who's in the ambulance.
No.
Yeah.
And then the next thing we see, they're in a convalescence, like a nursing home, they call it, but it's sort of like a hospital, a rehabilitation like hospital. And we hear from a nurse tells us through dialogue that there's a British officer here and he's received a cut to his lip.
Yeah.
And it's going to take like 4 weeks to heal, and he's completely bandaged up and he can't hear or speak because his face is so bandaged up. And I thought, we're going to do a thing here where it's actually Theo under the bandage and there's... Because Edith has come to visit.
Right.
No, that didn't happen. That would be so trite. No, it's actually Candy under the bandage. And there's quite a funny scene where he speaks with sign language to Edith. Really funny. But it's since... I think perhaps it was a draw.
Okay.
So because Theo has a 12-inch cut on his forehead.
Right.
And Candy has his upper lip, kind of like a 5-inch cut on his upper lip. It's opened him right up.
Yeah.
And now they're covering it up.
Right, okay.
Because it's, I don't know, for 1 second it was a huge matter of honour. The next, we just have to pretend this never happened.
Neither of them wanted to be involved in this anyway.
That's right. But also, this is another thing of the film. Like, you can be cutting one another with swords 1 minute, and the next we'll just pretend that never happened.
Yes.
And we'll just get back to what we were doing.
Yes.
And that's what happened. So that's why we get that story about him falling through glass.
Right, okay.
No, he was actually cut with the sword.
Okay. So, what happens is, because they're both in the hospital, they start hanging out playing bridge together. They need two more. It's Edith and Candy are in the hospital. They want to play cards. They've got cards. They've got a little card table, but they need two more to play bridge. So they bring in this other woman. I'm not sure who she was. And they bring in Theo.
Yeah.
And they become...
Fast
Candy
friends.
and Theo become best friends.
Well, they recover for like a month together, and they don't see anybody else.
Yeah.
They're bandaged up. For some reason, they're in wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Even though...
They're cutting the leg as well.
Even though they're... Okay, that's fine. At first, Theo doesn't know any English whatsoever.
It's very much and very much.
That's right.
Those are the only words he knows.
Incidentally, a point of trivia. Walbrook, who played Theo, had been working as an English language actor in Britain for a couple of years at this point. But he still needed help with his English occasionally. And he had a coach when he worked on this movie.
Okay.
Her name was Edith Williams.
Oh, okay.
And of course, Edith Hunter teaches Theo English in the film.
Right, yes.
Just a little coincidence.
So, finally, Candy is ready to go back to England. He's recovered.
Yep.
And on the day he's going to leave, Theo walks in and he says, "I love your Edith Hunter." Mm-hmm. He assumes that Candy and Edith are engaged.
Yeah, a bit of a silly assumption since Edith can speak fluent German.
Yes, but I guess he just assumed. It never came up in conversation. Never came up. And he's like...
But she loves him too.
Yeah, she loves him too. They've decided to... He actually says he's going to have to duel Candy again in order to win.
He thinks they're going to have to fight a second duel.
Yes.
Because he thinks that Edith is his fiancée.
Yeah.
Like, this is a terrible thing that they've fallen in love.
Yeah. But Candy sets him straight. He's overjoyed for him, actually, for the two of them. Initially... He doesn't realize...
He's stunned at first.
Yes.
And then, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
He's stunned. He asks him to repeat himself.
Yeah.
And it's all very tense. And then, the sun after a storm, he's just beaming and he wants drinks and... Let's have a cigarette, let's have a drink. Nurse, come in and have a drink with us. He's so happy. He says he couldn't be happier. He's ecstatic.
Yes. So he congratulates them. There's a funny scene where they both put on the ladies' hats as they're having their drinks. And he gives her a goodbye kiss. Candy gives Edith a goodbye kiss. And this is a moment where he kind of like, oh, I have some unresolved feelings.
Yeah, we know already.
We know, yeah.
Because we know this guy's an incurable romantic already because of his gallivanting around defending the honour of the British Army.
Yes.
And, we already know that he's fallen for Edith.
Yeah.
But actually, he himself doesn't really.
He doesn't, until he leaves, he doesn't really realize. Then he goes back to England.
But we don't know. We don't really know for sure at this point. It comes up later.
No, it comes up a little bit later.
Great storytelling in this movie. He goes back to England, and then he takes out Edith's sister
on a date.
A date.
To see this opera of Ulysses or something like that.
Yes.
And then he goes back to his aunt's house, where he's staying. Or I guess he's just visiting her. No, he just pops in on his aunt, and she's like, "You better stay here. Like, just sleep all night. We've got room for you, whatever."
Yeah, he and his aunt don't get on. He's also he gets strips torn off him by the same colonel, the guy that played Watson.
Yes.
Colonel Beveridge or whatever his name is. And once again, after this guy's absolutely savaged him, he says, "Come and have dinner with me tonight."
Yes.
I mentioned this twice because it's important.
Yes.
Because it comes up again, doesn't it, at the very end of the movie?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Okay, so he goes to his aunt's house. He seems a bit down. He's like, "I went out with Edith's sister. She wasn't any fun. I liked Edith." This is when he figures out that, this is the problem. Now we have one of the most amazing montages in film history. So in this room, there are mounted heads on the wall of animals that have been hunted.
Animals that he has shot. Candy has shot in South Africa when he was there campaigning in the Boer.
And there's a few, and then she says, "Look, we've got lots of room for you to sleep, and also there's lots more room on the wall for your trophies, your heads." And then we get this montage of, we get a label of the animal, for example, moose, Nova Scotia or something like that, and then you hear a gunshot, pow, and then the head will magically appear on the wall, pop, in time with the gunshot, and and there's dates on all these things he's shooting, so we can see the years. This is how we see the
passage of time with exploding animal heads mounted on walls.
Yes,
unique. I've never seen anything like it
before or since. It actually, on one of the commentaries on like the DVD or something, somebody pointed out this is more something you would see in the 60s. Like when you're getting more experimental filmmaking coming along. This is a really amazing sequence.
It's crazy. I couldn't believe again, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah, and the guy who shot this, I also saw in the same thing, was not the cinematographer on the movie, but he became Powell's cinematographer on like later movies. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But the last trophy we see is a Hun helmet, 1918.
Yep. To show that he's
from Flanders, I think it's labeled. Yeah.
Yes. So it's a German. It's the famous spiked helmet.
Yes.
So we know that he's served in the First World War.
Yes, and the date is 1918. So now we're in our next time frame. So we moved from 1902 to 1918. So now we're in World War I.
Yep. The very end of World War One.
Yes,
he's now,
the very, very end.
Yes, the day of the armistice. He's now a general.
Yeah, and he's on his way home for leave.
Yes.
So he's trying to. They're out there in the fields. He's trying to get back home. He stops at one. What would you call this encampment? Like it's like a stronghold, a base.
It's literally like a farmhouse.
Yeah.
That some soldiers have commandeered.
They've commandeered
as a headquarters.
Right.
And they've also taken some prisoners there, some German prisoners.
Yes, but first the Germans had taken some... So what happened is some of their men, 3 of their men had been captured, and then these other men showed up, and it seemed like they had some dynamite, they're going to blow up a bridge. And Candy's like, well, how'd they know about the bridge? And then the commander at this base says, well, 3 of our guys were captured.
The commander at the base, incidentally, is South African.
Right, okay. Interesting. So now they figured, so this information must have been tortured out of our boys.
That's what he says. This is what the...
So Candy's like, he's like, they're fighting foul. How can this be?
Yeah.
Like, that's not how wars are fought. This is dirty fighting, to torture people to get information out of them.
Much like when
there's no gentlemanliness or chivalry in that.
Like when he's arrested in the bath, he just can't... It's like they're talking another language.
Yes. It's 1918, he's already stuck in the... Even his vision of the Boer War was probably romanticized and incorrect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now it's getting worse.
Yeah.
16 years later.
He's got his mustache. Incidentally, he's grown his mustache to cover his drooling scar.
That's right, yes.
Which, incidentally, he got because of his romanticism. Because of his urge to go and fight the good fight
Yeah.
to clear Britain's name in Berlin.
Yeah.
That's why he's grown his mustache.
Yeah.
Now he's, as you said, he's been through, I guess, 4 years of the First World War, and astonishingly, his idealism is still intact.
Yes.
Or would you call it idealism? He's more, or his blimpism,
Yeah.
which is starting to become apparent at this point,
Yeah.
is proving invulnerable.
He's really stuck in the
Resistant.
past, and these prisoners, they've caught these German prisoners. He lines them up. He asks them some very soft questions that they refuse to answer, and then he walks out. And the other two guys at the base are looking at each other like, "Okay, let's get into these prisoners."
We get the South African Von Zane, I think his name is. He starts asking hard questions.
Yeah,
And of course we can't show it, but it's implied
yeah.
That
He's going to use German methods.
he's
let's call
going to
them.
torch them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
He's going to use the methods
Yeah.
that he has told Candy the Germans used on
Yeah.
their own soldiers to find out about the bridge.
Yeah.
Anyway, Candy just sort of lets this sort of slides off Candy's back like water.
yeah.
Water off a duck's, and he heads off to his next destination, which
Yeah.
is a transport kind of like...
It's supposed to be like a train depot of some sort. It's held by Americans.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be able to get on train there. When he gets there, there's no train.
No.
There's no track. He's like, how am I supposed to get... He says this sort of inefficiency would never have been forgivable in the Boer War.
Again, a remarkable...
Inefficiency. He's worried about
South
inefficiency.
Africa. This would have never happened, and he's getting a bit plummier because he's a bit older.
Yeah.
This would never have happened in South Africa
Yeah.
or in Swaziland.
Yeah.
And these Yanks, these Americans, who were played by real American GIs, incidentally.
Right. Yes, right. I saw that in the credits. They're actually given their ranks in the credits. Yeah.
Yeah, who would have been stationed in England in '42.
Jesus. Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know how they got them. They couldn't get help from the British Army, but they got some from the US Army.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just sort of, they can't believe this guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they're like, well, there's a convent up there
he asks where he
2
can
miles
get a
away.
meal.
But he can
He says,
go.
if I can't... First of all, they try to send him back to where he came from. He's like, I just came from there. And then he's like, well, sorry, there aren't any trains. I can't conjure one up from nothing. And he says, well, where can I get some food? And he says, well, there's the French name. And he says, is that a pub?
Yes, this
like,
is the
no,
Crown of Thorns.
It's a convent.
Yeah, yeah. So as they go out, one of the soldiers, the younger one, says to the older one, the American, says, "What was the Boer War?" And that other one, there were two that he mentioned.
Yeah.
And the commander says, "Oh, some sort of summer maneuvers."
Yeah, those weren't wars; they were summer maneuvers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So he gets to this convent, which is full of
A fair
nurses.
statement, because
Yeah.
there's nothing in history to compare with the First World War.
Right.
Obviously, at this point in
Yeah.
time. It's
Yeah.
really the first kind of total war, what we would call a total war, where the whole kind of like productive capability of a modern nation state is bent to
Yeah.
armed conflict.
Yeah.
You could almost say that Candy could have a romantic view of war when it was him kicking the shit out of less developed peoples in Africa
Right.
and other British colonies, or the poorly equipped Boers
Yeah.
who did not have the kind of equipment that the British Army had. The
Yeah.
Americans are right to be contemptuous of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's easy to have superior logistics and mechanization when you're facing a bunch of farmers or guys with spears.
Yeah, yeah. So he gets to this convent, and it's full of these nurses. One of them is the spitting image of Edith. But
Because
this is
she's played by Deborah Kerr.
Deborah Kerr again. Now, he's like immediately taken with her.
Yes.
He's trying to find out more information. Does anybody know that
Smitten
girl's
with-
name?
Yep, he's asking the French nuns, he's asking the other nurses.
Probably not healthy. Looking at it now, for him to be because he does it again later in the movie. He goes after another spitting image of her.
Well, we even get a line in the very next scene with his Batman, Murdoch,
Yeah.
who says that she's the ninth.
Right.
The ninth.
Right.
He keeps seeing women that are the quote-unquote spitting image of
Yeah,
Edith.
Yeah. So, like I'm saying, probably emotionally unhealthy. I didn't mind having Deborah Kerr in 3 roles.
She's incredible.
She's really good.
But this is part of his blimpish nature. And in
Yes.
fact, it might even be... The film even hints that this might be the cause of his stunted...
Oh, right.
Of his sort of like
He's
emotional...
stuck in the past because of his unrequited love for her from 1902.
I think it's implied.
Okay. That's a fair reading.
because he keeps... And, I mean, the fact that... I mean, it is Deborah Kerr that's playing her over and over, but I think we're perhaps seeing Candy's view of her.
Yeah.
Although, in the later scene, Teo himself notices the similarity.
Right.
But, yes, we find out that Candy sees Edith everywhere.
Yes. Yes. So, okay, he gets a message that armistice has been declared, and his statement at this point is right is might.
Yes.
He says
he's ecstatic. He says, "Do you know what this means?" He says, "Do you know what this means to Murdoch?" And Murdoch says, "It means we're going home." And he says, "Yes, it does mean that, but it means much more than that to me. It means that right is might.
Yes.
It means that good conquered evil."
Well, it means that the Germans were bombing hospitals, killing women and children. We didn't stoop to that level. We maintain our honor. He believes.
He says, the Germans used poison gas. They bombed hospitals. They sunk non-aligned shipping, and yet they still lost.
Yeah.
He specifically doesn't. He just sort of he says, and yet they still lost.
Yeah.
Yet we still won.
Yeah.
They did all those things, but we still won. Of course, Britain did all those things as well.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But, okay, so this is the question of this movie again. 1943, do the filmmakers not believe that Britain was doing that, or do they believe it and are allowed to say it?
It's an incredible thing to say.
Yeah.
In 1942.
Yeah.
I mean...
Clean fighting, honest soldiering have won.
Yes.
Those are his exact lines.
The message, I mean, we'll talk a bit more about the message, but the message here is that, I mean, Blimp, remember, he's certainly sympathetic.
Yes.
But he's also pathetic.
Yes.
And ridiculous.
Yes.
He's wrong.
Mm.
And the film is letting us know that.
Mm. Yes.
Over and over.
Even if it's not in terms of atrocities, he's behind the times. We've seen in several ways in this sequence.
He's naive.
Yes.
And stuck in the past.
Yeah.
This attitude, he's completely wrong. Britain didn't win the First World War because they were better sports.
No, yes.
That's an insane attitude.
Yeah.
Germany was starved into submission.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so he gets back to England. He's tracked down Barbara, the look-alike of Edith. She's 20 years younger than him, which they state out loud.
Yes, again, great, some great honesty.
It's honest, but they seem generally it's.
They are in love.
They played it so well. They're very deeply in love with each other.
There's a great scene. I think again, a modern movie would never include this scene, but all he knew about her was that she was a nurse from West Riding, from Yorkshire in England. So we get this scene. It's like I think they're announcing their engagement. And there's a bishop there, and he sort of gives a short speech about the great charity work that Candy has done in Yorkshire, holding a ball for nurses that served in the Great War. And then any other film, I guess, would leave it at that point. But then Candy gets up
and confesses that it was
that he did it just to find her.
Motive. Yes.
And the bishop just sort of stares at him.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so he discovers during this period of time that Teo has been taken prisoner. He's a prisoner of war in England. So they go to the POW camp where the prisoners are listening to an orchestral concert.
Yep.
And he sends a note to Teo, who's out there listening to the show, and Teo ignores the note. And then he's like, why is that? And there's an interesting speech here from Barbara, who's about, art versus war, and them listening to this beautiful music, and them producing this beautiful music and art, and yet waging wars.
How can they be butchers 1 minute and then the next minute sit down and listen to Mahler?
Yeah. So Candy actually physically goes out to track him down during the interval.
Well, because he sent him a letter, but Teo's refused to see him.
And he sees Teo, and Teo gives him the cold shoulder.
Pretends he doesn't see him, walks away.
Yeah, or he looks right at him and walks past him.
Yeah.
I think, it's really interesting, this movie, 3 or 4 times, I didn't know where things were going with Teo, and the movie never goes the way you think it's going to go. You think this is going to be, this is where that relationship's broken now, it's done. That's not how it plays out. He just couldn't greet his old friend in front of all his fellow soldiers, really, or he was unsure of his own feelings in that moment.
Yeah. Well, again, Candy's has failed to learn.
Yes. Yes, that is... You've hit the nail on the head. Candy thinks that, the war's over. We can just go back to the way things were. I can just walk in there in my uniform.
The uniform of the conquering nation.
Through all these other uniformed Germans and just walk up to my old pal and say, "Hey, pal," and they'll be okay with it and he'll be okay with it because that's how we were gentlemanly soldiers.
Just like the duel.
Yeah.
We can just...
Yeah. It was just a duel. It was a game to him. This whole war was a game.
Yeah.
Like a duel. A matter of honor.
Yeah.
And now that matter of honor is settled, we can just go back to being pals again.
Yep. And in case we miss it, it's hammered home because in the very next scene, they reconcile.
Yes.
Candy's back home.
Yeah.
He gets a phone call. It's Teo.
Yeah.
He's like in a train station.
Yeah, he's about to be shipped back.
About to go back to Germany.
Yeah.
And, he apologizes. "I'm sorry I did that. I'm sorry I snubbed you at the camp. Like, you should really know why I did that."
Yes,
but,
yes, yes.
But I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And Candy's like, "Oh, I'm going to, thank God, I can't wait to see you. I'm going to send a car."
I have to say, I was so glad because I really wanted these guys to get along. I was really rooting for them.
Yeah.
I loved this friendship, and it broke my heart when Teo gave him the cold shoulder. So,
but then we get this wonderfully excruciating scene.
Oh yeah.
So
Candy's having a dinner party with a room full of blimps.
It's his bachelor party.
Right, yes.
So his wife's not there. Yeah. It's his bachelor party. And we have all these kind of like middling...
There's 20 blimps in the room.
All of these blimps.
Yeah.
From the middle management types. Yeah. Before like the middling aristocracy and of the British public service and armed forces. And he introduces them all. One after another, after another, after another. Yeah. And Teo, a German officer, who has spent
in uniform
the last year in his German uniform, he spent like the last year or something in a prisoner of war camp, has to greet one after another these British apparatchiks. It's just so excruciating. And then they all, none of them get it. They're all talking about the post-war order and just about how everything's just going to go back to normal. Yeah. How Germany's just going to be... They want to trade with Germany.
Yes.
And Candy's like, well, we're not...
If we don't reconstruct, how will we have anyone to trade with? Yeah. There's a lot of Blimpisms in these scenes. Yeah.
God, sir!
Yes. Yes.
If we don't reconstruct the enemy we just killed, who will we trade with?
The reconstruction of Germany is essential to the peace of Europe. Yes, all these sorts of lines. They say the game is over. They seem to be oblivious to the England being an occupying force and the effect that will have.
They just think, well, we're not going to occupy for long. We can't afford it.
They're like, well, yes.
God, sir.
Yes.
God, sir, we can't occupy Germany. Think of what the taxpayers would say. These are literal lines from the film. Yeah. Except they're not saying God, sir. That's the only thing.
Yes. Yes.
That's missing.
Yes. They are in disbelief that Teo has doubts. Yeah. He's like, I'm going to be unemployed. I'm going to go home. I'm going to have no job. The country's in ruins. How am I going to survive?
Germany's not going to have an army. How can Germany have an army now? Like, the country's literally on its knees and you won't allow it to have an army.
And they just can't understand what this guy's talking about.
These guys don't get it. There are people, like, the Treaty of Versailles was brutally hard on Germany in the post-war.
Yes. In fact, there are a few lines in here where they're like... I can't remember the lines, and I didn't write them down in my head, but they were kind of foreshadowing of like, this will make you, the occupying force will make you happy. Like, this is like you're going to be satisfied because of these things, and you won't want to wage war again because of these things.
That's it. He's already left behind.
Yeah.
It's not even the 40s yet.
Yeah.
Whereas Sarah gets it. He knows he's going home to a ruined Germany.
Yes.
That was starved into submission and humiliated. This isn't like the colonial wars of the previous century. Yeah. Right? This isn't like the little wars. This is total war. Yeah. And Germany has suffered total defeat. Teo gets it. Yeah. He knows that peace is going to look very different in this new era. Yeah. But Candy and his other blimps, but especially Candy, because Candy gets all the best lines. We want to be friends!
Yes.
Everything will be as it was. He has not... Once again, he hasn't got it. he hasn't learned.
There's some lines I found some on it. War is the most unpopular thing in England. They are already organizing pacifist societies. Their newspapers are anti-militia.
This is the blimps going around the room, yeah.
Yes. And I think this is maybe this is when Teo's on the train going back, and he's talking about how naive the British are about all this.
Yeah.
And he says, this childlike stupidity is a raft for us in a sea of despair.
Yeah.
Is the line he gives. Is like this
a slightly ominous line.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, and you think
point,
Teo's going to go bad.
He's going to go
Be Nazi. Again, this movie flip-flops in a way that I was very satisfied with the flip-flop. But he's just like rational about what this is not.
When he calls them naive children, that really, Candy's a sympathetic character, but he's so childlike.
Yes.
He's like an enormous overgrown child.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt that we never ever see him doing anything aggressive or violent, despite his lifelong career as a soldier.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Doesn't he say at one point, I tried to kill Germans? Or no, that's what Teo says. He should have tried to kill English at some point. Yeah, anyway. There's awareness from Teo, anyway. Okay, so now we get another fast-forward montage. This time it's with the scrapbook.
Yep.
With newspapers. We learn, sadly, that Barbara dies during this period.
Yeah.
And it stops at 1939. Now, Teo has fled Germany. We learn that he's widowed as well.
Yes. And his two sons have joined the Nazi party, and they want nothing to do with him, because he's an anti-Nazi, as we find out. He's in might be my favourite scene in the whole film.
Yeah. Amazing scene, yeah.
Teo is in just some office. It looks like a converted schoolroom or something.
Yeah.
And he's pleading his case as a refugee, essentially, to be given residency in the UK. And they give him this stuff that the official says these things to him that could be said to someone today, just stuff about, can we trust you,
You could be lying about.
You could be a liar.
He says a spy, any spy wanting to
would say what you said.
Who's come here for asylum would say what you said. So.
One enemy here is worth. One enemy on our home shore is worth 10 in Europe.
Yes.
Another line.
Yeah.
And so up to this point, Teo's just sort of been very kind of like saying what he thinks they want to hear.
Yeah.
A bit like Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption in his parole hearings.
Yeah.
And then he says, then he breaks down and tells, quote unquote, the real truth.
Yes.
And he gives this amazing speech, this amazing monologue, essentially, about why he left Germany, like what's happened with his wife, what's happened with his kids, why he's here. He says, I'm here because I'm homesick.
Yes. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's not his home. Germany's his home, but the Germany that was his home doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. And his wife was English.
And his wife was English. Mm. This is her home.
Yeah.
Home comes up a lot in the movie, actually.
Mm.
People are often talking about home. Their aunt says you'll always have a home here to Candy. When Candy moves into his home in London.
With Barbara. She says, promise you'll stay here forever, even if the second flood comes.
Yeah, that's
Until the second flood comes or something like that. She says, promise me you'll live here forever.
Until the floods come and this is a leak. She says, don't change as well to Candy. She says, don't change. Promise me you'll never change.
Yeah.
Till the floods come and this is a lake.
Yes.
This house, she means.
Yeah.
Which, of course, would never happen, right?
Yeah. And so, again, in this scene, also interrogation scene, this is, of course, Walbrook, as we mentioned.
This is his real-life story.
It's his real-life story, and also Pressburger's real-life story to the extent that he was still considered an enemy alien.
That's right. He also, fleeing the tide of authoritarianism in Europe.
Yeah.
Just the pathos. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
I loved it. I just loved it. And even then, the official's unmoved and says, look, isn't there anybody you could ask to vouch for you here in Europe?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I did write to an old friend of mine, a man who I thought was my friend, but I haven't heard anything back from him. And then, bam, in he comes, like a storm cloud. Like a gust of wind, in he bursts.
Yes.
It's Major General Candy wearing your hat. He takes his hat off, he's bald.
Yes.
It's the Candy from the first scene of the film.
Yeah.
It's amazing, the transformation.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
And he's got this big grin. He's so happy to see Teo, of course.
Yeah.
Immediately invites him back to his house.
Yes. And then there's a real Blimp line here where Teo talks about Barbara who passed away in Jamaica apparently.
Yeah.
And he says it must have been sad to lose your wife in a foreign country. And Candy says it wasn't a foreign country, it was Jamaica.
Because he's an imperialist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just in case we were feeling a little too sorry for him.
Yeah. So Candy now has this driver, what was her name? She goes by the name of Johnny.
Angela is her name.
Angela. But she goes by Johnny.
Yep.
She is, again, Deborah Kerr, again.
Amazing.
And apparently chosen out of 700 people. And she's like, isn't that amazing? What luck? And then Teo gets a good look at her. He's like, oh, it wasn't luck. He knows the truth.
He's still looking for Edith, yeah.
Yeah. So,
and she loves him. Everyone loves the general.
Yes.
They think of him as a lovely, an old dear, I think she calls him.
Yes. That's right. He's like a granddad to her.
Yep, a harmless old man.
That's right. He is set up to do an interview for BBC Radio, and they cancel that.
Yep.
It was because of his statements about...
It was because of the text of the address. He was going to give an address about the retreat from Dunkirk.
Right.
And it was all set to go, but he's presumably submitted his speech to them beforehand, and the government has cancelled it.
Yeah.
He has a real kind of blustering scene where he tells off the BBC functionary who's told him that he won't be recording. Tells him, I was a soldier, I've always been a soldier, I was a soldier when you were just a toss-up between a boy or a girl's name, which I thought was a pretty cool line. He goes back to his house in disappointment. Johnny, Murdoch, and Teo are there. Yeah. Murdoch has since become his, butler.
Yeah.
And they've, been listening on the wireless, waiting to hear it, but it didn't happen. It's a surprise to everyone except Teo. And they said, well, why weren't you surprised, Teo? And he says, because I read the speech. I knew they weren't going to broadcast it. Clive comes home. He's a bit disconsolate.
Yeah. He also... Is this the point where he gets a letter about being decommissioned?
He does get that letter. He either reads it now or later, but there's a scene where Teo explains, look, you can't be surprised that they didn't broadcast the speech. And Candy's like, why the devil not? Why didn't they broadcast my speech? And he goes, because look at what you said. You said that, basically it would be, we should never stoop to the tactics of the Nazis. And he said, you would rather be dead. You would rather Britain lost.
Yes.
Than adopt the techniques of ungentlemanly warfare.
Yeah. Be too fair to hit back or something is the line.
Yeah,
and he says this is not a gentleman's war.
That's right. This is. And he's like, but I have all this. I have all this experience. I have all this knowledge, and Teo said it's a different knowledge they need now.
Yeah, that his knowledge is obsolete.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, Candy's like, better to be defeated than to be a cad. This is not what is coming. Yeah, Churchill's famous speech, right? Blood, toil, tears, and sweat. He said, "What is our aim? Victory. Victory at any cost."
Yeah. And also Teo's application is rejected, we learn at this almost same point. So they're both on the outs, effectively. But they...
Oh yes, he's received a letter saying that he's been decommissioned. This is a terrible blow.
Yeah.
Terrible blow.
Because he's a career soldier of the most careerist, most soldierist you can imagine.
Yeah.
But they consoled him by saying, well, you can command the Home Guard. You can get a role with the Home Guard.
Yeah, there's the Home Guard. They need leaders. Yeah. Murdoch's already joined it.
Right. Yes, that's right.
He perks up immediately. Oh, this is great.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. I'm gonna lead. I'm gonna have something to add because he's a patriot above all.
Yes.
And we get another time lapse.
Yeah, bit of a montage with
great
magazine headlines
covers.
And stuff. Yeah, of him in his role
in the Home
commanding
Guard.
The Home Guard.
We see photos of him organising the troops.
Yeah.
The old men and boys and all that of the Home Guard.
And then we catch up to the opening of the movie where Spud gets his orders for the maneuvers.
Yeah. And this time we see it from a different perspective.
Yeah, so we get some additional moments where we see what the Mata Hari business was. We see him...
It's just a great touch.
...go in and talk to Deborah Kerr as Angela, Johnny, and we learned that she had already told him where Candy was going to be, and now when he says, well, we're going to start our maneuvers, she's like, you can't do that, that's against the rules. And then he's like, this is what I'm going to do. She's out. She's very upset. that her granddad is going to be attacked like this. So then she runs out. They get in a tussle where he gets knocked over, he trips and falls or whatever. She runs out. She goes to. She
doesn't actually deck him. I mean,
no.
It was implied in the first scene that she did.
Yes, that's right. Because we didn't know quite what was happening the first time around.
Yeah. We even get a lot of shots of of music being put on, like an early jukebox kind of thing.
Yes.
Which again, just a little thing.
Yeah.
But in the first film, in the first scene, that music was just playing, and you just figure it's the soundtrack to the film. And then in this later scene, when we're seeing what actually happened, we find out that the music was really playing diegetic.
Yes.
Just again, it's maybe something you would expect to see in the '60s.
Yeah.
But just this is such a nice little touch.
Yes. It really is. We get all these things are pieced together. Like when she arrives at the bathhouse, she hides under a desk, and the soldiers know she's there. But she's actually on the phone. She's trying to warn the Major General. We get a bit more of that this time around. We get a bit more of all those details. But finally, because he was captured, I guess he's out of the game. He's disconsolate. He's sitting on a park bench.
He's been humiliated.
But,
yeah. I mean, and Teo and Johnny come up, and they're just like, "So, we're sorry this happened."
Yes.
And then Teo actually says, "You know, you have to admit, it's kind of funny."
Yes. But also at the start of the sequence, we see that his house, the aunt's house, has been bombed out.
Oh yeah, when we get the transition from 39 to 42.
Yeah.
His house has been, and Murdoch's died.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
It's been bombed out. Yeah, you're right. His house, and someone pulls up one of the moose heads.
Yes. Yeah, and it's like joking about it in a very
he's just
casual. Yeah, but it's very casual in a similar way to that the young soldiers treated Blimp in the first scene.
That's right.
Right. They are very dismissive. They don't know what the story is behind the moose head, if you know what I mean, or like the mustache or the fat gut or all that kind of stuff.
So now this is the final scene.
Yeah.
Candy post-humiliation, I suppose, sitting outside the ruins of his house.
Yeah. Which is now flooded.
Yeah, it's been made into a cistern.
It's been turned into a lake.
Yeah. And he says, even now, he says, well, what someone asks him, either Teo or Johnny asks him, what's going to happen to Spud?
Yeah.
And Candy says, well, I suppose there'll be a court-martial. There'll be an inquiry. He'll be brought up on charges. I'll put a stop to it all.
Right.
Fair play, again, overall.
Yeah.
He doesn't... And then he says, he comes to terms with it, somewhat. He realises that he hasn't changed. He can't change.
Yeah.
That maybe they do need something new, something different now.
Yeah.
He says, I want to invite him to dinner.
Yes. Yes.
I want you, Johnny, I want you and Spud to come to dinner. He says, I remember when I got back from Berlin all those years ago, 1902, Colonel so-and-so gave me the wigging of a lifetime, he says. And then straight afterwards, he invited me to dinner and I didn't go. I often wish I had. I hope Spud will. I like this because it's just a hint, that Blimpism isn't all bad.
Right. There's some values.
This is mostly negative.
Yeah.
But the fact that he hasn't, and also Blimpism is eternal.
Yes.
It's always rolling
Every
over.
generation has them, yeah.
It's not just because he was a scumbag imperialist that ended up fighting a mechanized war and was ill-suited to it because his enemies weren't poor people from South Asia anymore. It's because it's partly that. But it's also because every generation has its blimps.
Yes.
And
as was implied in that scene with the period
with the period blimp.
Yeah.
And it's a teensy bit reassuring that he can't wait to ask this kid to dinner, the one that humiliated him. Then, as you say, he looks at his bombed out house and he looks at the cistern that they've made it into. He looks at it and he says, well, the lake's here and I still haven't changed.
Yes. Yes.
Then the victorious army marches by. We don't see them.
Yeah.
Because the Ministry of Information didn't give permission.
Yeah.
But we see him salute them as they go past.
Yeah.
And then the film ends.
Yeah. Okay,
and
so...
then we have a final... We see the tapestry again and we get a zoom on the shield and it's Sic Transit Gloria Candy. So passes the glory of Candy.
Right. Okay, well, you read 2 whole books, so you must have some deep trivia on this one, which we haven't covered yet.
I have.
Well, let's talk about the censorship first, because this is some of the stuff I read in the complete Blimp had some of the information about the attempts to suppress this movie.
Yes, well, I mean, it came right from the top.
Yeah.
It came right from the top, from Churchill himself.
Yes.
So,
I started writing down, like, so there was the Secretary of State for War, this guy Peter Grigg.
Yeah.
So I wrote down this because there are all these letters that are collected in the complete Blimp book, and I wrote this down. It says, I attach a note on the Blimp film because he had seen it. It's being produced, which is in course of being produced, and which I think out of utmost importance to get stopped. And I thought, Whoa, that's heavy, and I wrote that down. But then there were 10 more letters, including from Winston Churchill and the Ministry of Information, which just got more and more, oh my God, we have to shut this thing down. So I couldn't keep going, but all right. You want to read the highlights?
Yeah, so at this point, the War Office has already refused to give...
Yes.
So it's the War Office itself that's refused to give permission to support the film.
And they threatened Powell with never getting a knighthood, according to Scorsese. Yeah.
On the ground that it would give the Blimp conception of an army officer a new lease of life at a time when it is already dying. That whatever the film makes of the spirit of the young soldier of today, the fact remains that it focuses attention on an imaginary type of army officer which has become an object of ridicule to the general public. This is Grigg. To which, in reply, so this is a note that Grigg sent to Winston Churchill. In reply to which, Churchill wrote the following often quoted memo. Pray propose to me the measures necessary to stop this foolish production before it gets any further. I am not prepared to allow propaganda detrimental to the morale of the army, and I am sure the Cabinet will take all necessary action. Who are the people behind it? So this was a memo that he sent to the Minister of Information, to Brendan Bracken, who was a protege of his. To which Bracken replied, much to his credit, he mentions that it's a private film, and there's absolutely nothing that the Ministry of Information can do to suppress it.
Yeah.
He says, we've tried discouraging it by the means open to us. There's literally nothing else we can do. You know, we can't... He said, you know, we have free speech in this country. So, you know, there's nothing we can do. And Winston Churchill said, you know, like, we can't just ban stuff on the grounds of, quote-unquote, expressing harmful or misguided opinions. To which Churchill replied, we should not act on the grounds of expressing harmful or misguided opinions, but on the perfectly precise point of undermining the discipline of the army. You and the Secretary of State should bring the matter before the Cabinet on Monday, when I have no doubt any special authority you may require will be given to you. So Winston Churchill, who at this moment is leading Britain in a struggle for its very existence, is sending not one but two memos on the subject of a film he doesn't like very much.
Based on a comic strip. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It's incredible.
The scale of this,
So Bracken pushes back. And the film, of course, is released and becomes a big success.
Yes.
And benefits, of course, enormously from the fact that they could promote it as the film they tried to ban.
Yes. Now, they also tried to get it sent overseas, and then they're trying to stop the planes. Churchill's trying to stop these planes from getting out of the country with these...
That's 100% correct. So Bracken sends a memo to Churchill. Is it still your wish?
And they're also Bracken and all these guys, they just say, oh, this is a boring movie. No one will care.
Well,
they described it as boring multiple times. Yeah. This boring, stupid movie, no one will care.
Churchill went to the premiere.
Yeah.
He didn't like it.
Of course.
Of course. Yeah. So, you know, Churchill doesn't want it, he personally doesn't want it distributed overseas.
Yeah. Amazing.
And, you know, Bracken's saying, like, you know, we have no legal power to stop it, he says.
We can restrict...
And indeed, the statements appearing in the newspapers saying it has been banned probably only serve to advertise it.
Yeah.
And Winston Churchill replies to him, I think you should certainly stop it going abroad as long as you possibly can.
Yeah.
So then he goes on to say, all right, we've stopped it. Like, a couple of weeks goes by. It's from 11th of July 1943 to 23rd of July 1943. A couple of weeks goes by and he says, you know, the ministry should stop the film going abroad as long as we possibly could, is what you said. This we have managed to do so far by the unorthodox expedient of refusing the normal facilities for transport abroad by air. So they've
stopped they've not allowed them access to planes.
It's not an administrative ban.
Yeah.
You know, they haven't, but they've just said you can't use planes to distribute this film. But even if we were able to persist in this expedient, we could not either by legal or illegal action prevent the film from going abroad by any other means. You know, The producer of the film wants to show it overseas. The film is so boring, I cannot believe it will do any harm abroad to anyone except the company that made it, and this ministry has no reason to protect the company from the consequences of its own follies. I should propose to tell Mr. Rank, the producer, that he may make his own arrangements accordingly. Reading between the lines, like, Bracken is clearly saying, this is stupid.
Yes.
We should just release this film.
But some of those letters are also implying, well, let them release it because the movie's so bad it'll ruin the company.
I think reading between the lines, I don't think he really believes that.
Right.
I think he's just trying to save face, let Churchill save
Please
face.
let this go.
It's like, just
leave it alone.
To which Churchill replies, I do not agree with this surrender.
Yeah.
Will you please discuss this matter with me? If necessary, we must take more powers.
Wow, what a thing to waste your mental energy on in the middle of a war.
Amazing. In the very next telegram or memo, Bracken actually says, this is an illegal ban.
Yeah.
And then by the following month, 25th of August, it was granted permission to be released overseas after it had been enormously successful in the UK, broken records.
Right.
So it's just remarkable.
Yeah.
It might be that Churchill was sensitive to criticism.
Right, okay.
And it's likely that he had been stung in the past by comparisons with Blimp.
Oh, well, yeah, there's another thing on the DVD where you can see it on YouTube, it's uploaded, but Stephen Fry talks about how Churchill himself was probably a blimp.
Oh, 100%.
That was like...
He certainly is.
Yeah.
Certainly. He certainly becomes one.
Yeah.
Especially with his second term in the 50s.
Yeah.
So stupid.
All right, anything more about the movie we need to get in?
Oh, sure, for sure. But there are some parallels with Clive Wynne Candy and Churchill.
Okay.
Some suspicious parallels.
Okay.
They both went to Harrow, which is a public school.
Okay.
They both served in the Boer War.
Okay.
They were even involved... Churchill escaped from being a POW in the Boer War, whereas Candy was guarding POWs.
Okay, yeah.
They both served in the First World War.
Okay.
So Churchill famously fought in the trenches after he masterminded the disaster at Gallipoli. So, but ultimately, I think that's where the comparisons are. I don't think Candy is meant to be.
Right.
These might be tweaking. What else is there but the Boer War in the early 20th century? I think, I don't know, the Harrow thing might have been tweaking his nose.
Okay. Right.
But Candy is not meant to be Churchill. In fact, he's almost like the opposite. Because Churchill's a proponent. Churchill, while blimpish, is a proponent of the new war.
Okay. Okay.
I just have endless stuff that I've written down. Endless material, primary material, essentially.
Okay.
Just about what Powell and Pressburger thought the film was about. Michael Powell wrote a letter to the actress Wendy Hiller, who was the original choice for Edith and her other various iterations over the years. She ended up, I think, falling pregnant, which is why she didn't appear, and Deborah Kerr was cast instead.
Before you get to your 5-point letter from Powell...
Oh, yeah, yes.
I just want to mention, something we didn't talk about is the role of women in this movie, as portrayed by Deborah Kerr, in 3 different time periods. It's very explicit in the movie where she says in the first time period, 19, she's like, what roles are there available to a woman? She can become a governess, or she can get married. Yes. Candy's like, what's wrong with that? And she's like, what are you talking about? I
do want to return to that.
You're totally trapped. The second one, Barbara, can get married. She's to a man 20 years older than her. This is post-World War I. There's still not much better. She's a nurse.
I do want to talk about
And then the third one is driving, which even Teo's a little bit surprised that we've got a woman driver.
They keep saying women are fighting in the war.
Yes, and she uses the name Johnny.
Yes.
So there's definitely a deliberate pointing out the shift in these 3 time periods.
I've made a note of that too.
Yeah.
It has to do, I think, with the static nature of Candy versus the changing nature of the woman he's always searching for.
Yeah, it's kind of a foil to place him against. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we know that Candy can't change with the times. He's stuck in like the 1890s, I suppose. And he's also stuck on the woman he met
Yeah.
in 1902, very much so. He can't change, at least in part, because of his romantic attachment to this woman that he can't have.
Yeah.
He keeps seeing her everywhere, but he keeps seeing her in these women that are utterly different from the original Edith, at least in terms of what's socially possible for them.
Yes.
As you pointed out, Edith in the 1900s, she went abroad literally because there was nothing else she could have done.
That's right.
As a person that wanted to do something more than get married and pump out kids, the only thing she could do, the only thing she could parlay into a career was her proficiency in English.
Yeah.
She could go to Germany and teach English. Then once she'd learned German, she could return to England and teach German. That was the opportunity that a woman had for a career. And, like Candy just sort of goes right over his head. It's so funny how impenetrable he is. You just watch these great revelations go bouncing off his head. As if he were made of neutronium. And then he keeps seeing Edith, decade after decade. He keeps seeing this original girl. He overlays her, his ideal, on these people that are different. By the First World War, there are nurses going into France and looking after the men in combat.
Yeah.
Presumably something that was beyond the capabilities or potential.
What was allowed.
Yeah, what was permissible.
Yeah.
For the first woman he meets. Then, of course, by the 1940s, she's in the army. I mean, it's the woman's corps, presumably, but she's in the army, driving around.
Yeah.
That's how much it's changed. This is the consequence of kind of like total mobilization. And yet, he keeps superimposing, although we know that she does look like Edith, because even Thayer does a double take.
Yeah.
He's nonetheless superimposed this older ideal. It just serves, as you said, as a foil to reinforce over and over the fact that he's stuck
Yeah.
in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what was the letter with the 5 points?
I will get to that. I was just going to mention, in that very same letter, Michael Powell basically says what the film's about. He said, let us show, he's talking about Emeric here, so he says, he gives Emeric the credit for the idea. He says, let us show that blimps are made, not born. Let us show that their aversion to any form of change springs from the very qualities that have made them invaluable in action, that their lives, so full of activity, are equally full of frustration. We will show his youth and his youthful dreams, and we will show through his eyes the youth of today, the changing world of the last 40 years through the eyes of one unchanging man. He mentions in the same letter that he went to see Lowe, who he describes as Colonel Blimp's godfather and biographer. He says he was at first puzzled, then amused, and finally enthusiastic, and promised his support. Yeah.
There's photos of him on set in the bathhouse scene. Lowe was on the set.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think he had a look at the script and approved it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as Lowe sent, in 1942, Lowe sent Michael Powell a letter, sending him the kind of like the outline for the film, to which he replied, I've thought it over carefully and I have nothing but approval at this stage. The whole thing reads to me like the makings of a very good movie. After having chewed over our conversation, I conclude that there are no fundamental differences of opinion between Pressburger, yourself, and myself. That's sound basis for an adaptation if the creator feels that strongly about it. Alright, the theme of the film. What was the kind of the propaganda value of it?
Right.
So, the Archers weren't making propaganda. I don't think they really believed in making propaganda, as I'll get to when I talk about those 5 points. But they did write a little bit in correspondence to and from the War Office and the Ministry of Information about what they thought was going to be the value of the film. Kind of like, published in that second book that I read, The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, there was a letter that was presumably sent to the War Office, but the archivist could only find a draft without a date, in which Powell said, Englishmen are by nature conservative, insular, unsuspicious, believers in good sportsmanship, and anxious to believe the best of other people. These attractive virtues, which are, we hope, unchanging, can become absolute vices, unless allied to a realistic acceptance of things as they are, in modern Europe and in total war. If that isn't something worth saying, I'd like to know what is. So, they think they've got a point about how blimps may be fine people in peacetime, even.
Yeah.
But in wartime, that might be the message, that they're a hindrance to the effort.
Right.
They go even further on in sort of delineating this in the Ministry of Information, when it was still called The Life and Death of Sugar Candy, argued in a letter to the Archers that they felt that the film was, as I said, too sympathetic to Germans and also too critical of fair play.
What a blimpish complaint.
Yeah, very much so. To which the Archers replied, either Powell or Pressburger, or both of them in concert. Look, we are challenged by the ministry to state clearly the ideas towards which the audiences are to be directed. What are the chief qualities of Clive Candy? They are the qualities of the average Englishman. An anxiety to believe the best of other people, fairness in fighting, based upon games, fairness after the fight is over. We get it over and over, and a natural naivety engendered by class. I don't think Candy's class comes into the film a lot, but it's certainly there. Insularity and the permeability of the English language. Candy, of course, is monolingual. We think these are splendid virtues. So splendid that, in order to preserve them, it is worthwhile shelving them until we have won the war.
Right. Well, that's interesting too, because the character of Colonel Blimp in the comic strip is really a between the wars character that emerged in 1934 and wasn't really hanging around much, even during the war years, really. He was in between the wars. Yeah.
So, as I said before, I'm sympathetic to Candy, and actually I think there's something tragic about how, in order for modernity to win, people like him have to be ground into the dirt.
Yeah.
But I'm cheered up by two things.
Okay.
Noting, to build on the theme that Powell and Pressburger just sort of outlined what they think the film is about. Britain didn't become Nazis.
Yes.
They were still imperialists. But, and warfare changed. There was bombing of civilians on the bad side. Women had potential for women. The opportunities for women increased enormously. In all fields, including serving in the army itself. But they didn't become Nazis at home, right? Even if total war changed the characteristics of how wars were fought, the society itself didn't become totalitarian. And the ultimate evidence of that is the film, right? The fact that the film got released. This is a film that was considered detrimental to the war effort by the highest level of government in the country, waging a war for its very survival, and yet it was still released.
Yes.
It's kind of a triumph of liberalism, you might say.
Yes. It's interesting. The comic was translated into 14 languages, and yet it was banned in Italy and Germany.
Isn't that interesting? And yet it's so... Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Hey, how could you... Because it's not criticising, as Lowe said, it's not about British blimps. It's not about blimps in the army. It's not about blimps in government. It's about blimpness.
Yes.
Stupidity, the holding of contradictory opinions, and the forces of reaction and their absurdity. A very dangerous message in a fascist country, which is all about celebrating a kind of primeval traditionalism. And the holding of irreconcilable or contradictory opinions as truth. Very dangerous notions. No surprise that it's banned in Italy and Germany.
Yeah.
So while it's being banned in the fascist countries, it's an enormous success despite the Prime Minister himself trying to stop it in Britain. So there's something... So those virtues, I suppose, might have been shelved for a time, and yet they run right through and I guess eventually triumph. The other thing is, of course... My second thing that I find comforting, I suppose, is that those young... This is hinted at in the film. Those young men those thrusting, dynamic young men that took Candy prisoner in the baths, they're going to go on to become blimps themselves.
Yes.
They absolutely will. Look at the way the Second World War is treated even now in the third decade of the 21st century, let alone how it was treated for most of the 20th, as this wonderful conflict between good and evil, where good triumph over the...
Very clearly demarcated lines.
Yep. A clear triumph of good over the forces of evil.
Yeah.
where Churchill himself, a figure I find utterly contemptuous, a war criminal, an imperialist, the architect of the Gallipoli disaster, presided over famines in India, shot strikers in the UK. It makes me sick to see him celebrated over and over and referenced over and over in especially English British popular culture. It turns my stomach to see English character actors lining up to slur their way through his stupid lines. That's blimpism. It's the last time the UK was relevant on the world stage was in the Second World War, with Churchill sitting at Yalta with Roosevelt and Stalin. It's any wonder they celebrate him. Britain! Blimpism is still here. Those men turned into blimps themselves.
Yeah.
There's something reassuring there too. I mentioned earlier the letter that Powell wrote to Wendy Hiller, asking her trying to entice her to appear as Edith on the film. In it, he outlines 5 points which kind of sums up his philosophy of filmmaking.
Okay.
And I just want to read them out,
Okay.
and you can compare them to what passes for filmmaking, I suppose,
Okay.
in the present day. His first principle: 1. We owe allegiance to nobody except the financial interests which provide our money, and to them the sole responsibility of earning them a profit, not a loss. Okay, that sounds very mercantile, but what he actually means there is that they have no obligation to anybody else, not to the, not to the producers, not to the backers, not to the public, not to the censors. The only obligation they have is to provide a profit. 2. Every single foot in our films is our own responsibility and no one else's. We refuse to be guided or coerced by any influence but our own judgment. 3. When we start work on a new idea, we must be a year ahead, not only of our competitors, but also of the times. A real film, from idea to universal release, takes a year or more. Compare that to the endless mining of nostalgia and pre-existing properties that we deal with now. 4. No artist believes in escapism. And we secretly believe that no audience does. We have proved at any rate that they will pay to see the truth.
Yeah.
For other reasons than her nakedness. And 5, at any time, and particularly at the present, the self-respect of all collaborators, from star to prop man, is sustained or diminished by the theme and purpose of the film they are working on. They will fight or intrigue to work on a subject they feel is urgent or contemporary, and fight equally hard to avoid working on a trivial or pointless subject. We know we are surrounded by hungry sharks, but you have no idea what fun it is surf bathing. If only you have paddled with a nurse holding on the back of your rompers. We hope you will come on in, the water's fine. These are the main things we believe in. They have brought us an unbroken record of success and a unique position. Without the one, of course, we should not enjoy the other very long. I just can't, treating all the participants in the filmmaking process with respect and ensuring they're working on something that they find artistically rewarding, telling the truth, making a film with a theme that's not escapist fluff, making a film that you want to anticipate something rather than... It's any wonder they made masterpieces.
Yeah. Alright, does that cover it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do our ratings.
Comic, come on.
Well, great, but as I said, his needs context. A lot of them don't read well out of context. Some of them do, not for everybody, but great. I mean, how can I rate it otherwise? They're funny, clever, the writing is so good. Lo is so smart.
Yeah.
And he's, I'm aligned with Lo politically.
Of course.
So.
We perhaps didn't mention that, but Lo he's certainly found it easier to skewer right-wing opinions than he did left-wing ones.
Yeah.
I completely agree that they're valid, and I would say I agree that they reward the enthusiast of interbellum European history.
Yes.
More than they would.
I did have, a couple times I looked up maps. I was like, what's this place? Where's this?
And yet, some of them are just so timeless.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm not surprised. And it's not surprising at all that they were translated into 14 languages because...
Yeah, actually 24, actually.
Oh my god, 24. Yeah. So, and it's not surprising that they were banned in Italy and Germany because there are blimps in all times and all places.
Yeah.
And they...
it's in terms of cartooning, it's such a clever format to just find this one rhythm. Just this one thing, just hit it every time. This is the format of it every time. It's like a haiku. Just get in the pocket.
It's wonderful.
Really cleverly.
And some of them they just read so well even today.
Yeah. Okay, this movie...
This movie has been described as the greatest British film of all time. It's certainly... It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Glorious to look at as well.
Beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
Just overflowing with wonderful performances.
Yes, all around.
Pathos.
Yeah.
Even great sets.
Yeah.
Wonderful costumes. For a film set in 1942, and it's a thrill to see the scenes in 1942.
Yeah.
The scenes that are set contemporaneously, but also in Technicolor to see the Uhlans, the German, like the cavalrymen, the outfits they wore.
Yeah.
I've often railed against the drabness of modern films in their efforts to represent the past. The past was colourful.
Yeah.
We associate colour with vulgarity now, but they didn't used to.
Yeah.
It was flamboyant and associated with wealth. The uniforms of those, they just leap out of the screen.
Absolutely.
This is a masterpiece.
Yeah, and also for Livesey to play this guy over 40 years,
his performance is incredible.
Really something else.
Full disclosure, though, to anyone thinking to go and watch this right now, it's about 3 hours long.
Yeah, it's 2 hours 45. Yeah,
its only downside.
It's basically an hour per time period, I would say.
You could watch it in 3 sittings. The only negative mark on it would, I guess, be its length. But how could it be any shorter?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm very curious about that 75-minute version of Scorsese watching his 12.
Incredible.
Okay, adaptation. This is a tricky one. Normally I would say no, but low approved. So I'm gonna go. Wait, what are you gonna go on adaptation?
Well, you won't be surprised to hear that I think this is adaptation at its finest.
Okay. Because I think I think Blimp isn't. I think Candy is not a real Blimp in the way that Blimp is in the comic. That character in the comic, you cannot make a movie about that character. You cannot make a 90-minute movie about that guy that says the same thing in the same, has the same sentence structure over and over again. It's just not.
This is our long-running tug of war over what constitutes successful adaptation.
Yes.
As we've said in the past many times, there's tension in any adaptation between accuracy and invention.
Yeah.
I'm slightly on the side of invention, you're slightly on the side of accuracy. I couldn't think of a better way to adapt any comic than to flesh out, to create depth and backstory for a character.
Yes, maybe that hints at what I'm saying, is that the Blimp in the comic is two-dimensional, or one-dimensional.
One-dimensional. Yeah.
This is a three-dimensional character.
Yeah.
Because it's a movie, it has to be. You can't put a one-dimensional character in a movie. It's a bad movie. This is an instance where I agree that transformation was the right choice. So I'm going to go yay, because I don't want to put any black marks against this comic or this movie.
That's fair. That's fair.
In any way.
But I'd like to state strongly that this is what I think adaptation is. Film is a different medium from a single panel.
Yeah.
Like a cameo size comic.
But it's not even the fact that it's a cameo, it's a single panel. It's the single panel over and over again. It's not even different from strip to strip, where you have 30 different situations and you could build a movie around those. Like, we had all those gags in Addams Family that were in the movie from all those different strips. You can't do that with Colonel Blimp.
Many lines. There aren't many. Blimp, he does say Blimpish things.
Yes.
He doesn't have anything specific from Colonel Blimp in the comics. But
he is that type of guy if you meet him in the real world.
He certainly says Blimpisms. Yeah. And of course he looks exactly like him.
At the end, yeah.
At the introductory scene, you're in no doubt of who you're looking at.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable that he's a very handsome 36-year-old man.
Yeah.
Transformation is incredible.
Yeah.
It really shits all over modern. I can think of any number of films where crappy.
Yeah, up-aging or de-aging. Yeah.
Where it's done by computers or it's done with makeup.
Yeah.
It's no comparison. No comparison. But I would like to state strongly that I consider this to be what I would consider a true adaptation, in the sense that we've taken a character and expanded him and made him real and interesting.
Yeah.
In a way that you only could in a film.
Yeah.
and done the kind of things that Alan Moore did with Swamp Thing or Marvel Man, where you ask the question, who is this really?
Yes.
How could they exist?
Yes.
And can I tell an interesting story from that?
It's there in the title. The fact that it's called Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. By the way, he doesn't die, but maybe symbolically he does.
Of course, because
thematically.
Yes.
But to say Colonel Blimp in the title and not have Colonel Blimp in the movie means that the audience knows it's that type. That's the type.
You do, I
So
suppose...
this movie is an adaptation of the type is a yay. Yeah.
But, again, perhaps I will let the someone in the know speak.
Okay.
This is from David Lowe's autobiography, published in 1956. I enlarged my experience of life, watching from a privileged position behind the camera, the solid work of building up my simple symbol into a super colossal 2.5-hour feature film. Amazing chaps, this is Pressburger and Powell, both blending social ideas with entertainment in their own medium for their own public. A different blend, a different medium, and a different public from mine. I did not interfere. The product emerged at last as an extremely sentimental film about a glamorous old colonel whose romantic attachments nearly, but not quite, obscured the conclusion that if Britain followed his out-of-date ideas in modern war, we should all be blown to pieces.
Yeah. That's a good final word. Let's give it a sextuple yay.
Indeed.
It deserves it. Okay, please like, rate, review, subscribe. Please leave us a comment on Facebook or Instagram or Blue Sky. Please send us an email at the email address in the show notes, or all the links are in the show notes actually. And also please join our Patreon at patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion, all one word. Okay, next week we're going to do Constantine from 2005.
Amazing.
We're going to have an interview with Stephen Bissett again. It'll be his first time back on the show in about 2 years when we did Swamp Thing.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
And we'll be reading probably Swamp Thing number 37, which is the first appearance of Constantine, and like the first 12, 13 issues of the Hellblazer series.
I don't know about you, Kumar, but I see those comics when I close my eyes.
I don't know that series very well, actually. I know all the Swamp Thing Constantine stuff. I don't know his solo stuff.
Sure.
So if anybody's following along, I think there might be one or two other bits and pieces we'll put on there, but that should be enough if anybody's actually following along and wants to read along with us.
Excellent.